There is a reason some riders never crash for 30 or 40 years, while others keep collecting close calls and calling it luck. It is not because they never meet bad drivers. It is not because they ride slow everywhere. And it is definitely not because the road gives them special treatment. They do one thing differently before the trouble begins. They build an escape route into every move they make. Every lane position, every gap, every bit of speed is chosen with one question in mind. If this goes bad, where do I go? That sounds simple, but most riders only ask that question when it is already too late. Stay with me till the end, because this may change how you read every road from now on. The difference you don't see? You've seen them before, even if you didn't notice at the time. The riders who stay upright for decades don't ride like they're proving anything. They don't rush into gaps, don't snap the throttle just to feel alive, don't push hard unless the road truly asks for it. From the outside, they look almost slow, almost too calm, but there's something about how they move through traffic that feels deliberate, like every position on the road was chosen before they got there. It's subtle enough that most riders miss it completely. The truth is simple, and it's not flashy. These riders always leave themselves a way out. Every lane position, every roll of the throttle, every bit of spacing around them is set up so they're never trapped. They don't wait for something to go wrong to figure out what to do. They've already given themselves room to deal with it long before it happens. It's not a move you can point at or a skill you can show off. It's something that's always there, quietly shaping how they ride. And here's the part that throws most people off. It doesn't look impressive. There's no dramatic lean, no last-second save, no story to tell later. If anything, it looks almost boring. Just a rider moving smoothly, adjusting slightly here and there, never rushed, never caught off guard. That's why it's so easy to overlook. The absence of drama makes it invisible, even though it's doing all the work. Spend enough time watching closely, and you start to realize something uncomfortable. The guys who have the wild stories, the near misses, the moments they barely made it out of, they're not the same ones who stay crash-free for 30 or 40 years. The difference isn't luck, and it's not talent. It's how early they deal with problems, before anyone else even realizes a problem exists. That's where things start to shift, because the moment you understand what they're doing, it raises a bigger question about timing and what really decides the outcome on the road. The moment that's already decided. Out on the road, everything feels like it happens fast. A car moves, a gap closes, a corner tightens, and suddenly you're reacting. But here's the part most riders don't think about. By the time something feels dangerous, the outcome is already closing in. You're not at the beginning of the situation anymore. You're at the end of it, trying to salvage whatever options are left. Real-world timing doesn't give you room to figure things out in the moment. We're talking about seconds, sometimes less. A driver turns left. A truck drifts into your lane. A patch of gravel shows up mid-corner. By the time your brain fully recognizes what's happening, you're already working against the clock. Hands move, brakes come on, maybe you swerve. But all of that is happening at the tail end of the problem, not the start. Most riders lean on reaction without realizing it, trusting they will handle problems when they appear. Past saves and close calls build confidence, but also create a habit of waiting for danger to show itself before responding. That delay, even a single second, is where risk grows. It feels natural, because everything seems under control until it suddenly isn't. There's no clear warning that the important moment already passed earlier. What feels like a sudden problem is actually the result of something developing unnoticed. The situation didn't begin at that instant. It started earlier, in the part most riders never truly watch or question. Once you start looking at it that way, the crashes that seemed random begin to look familiar, almost predictable, and that's where the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. If this is already changing how you think about riding, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you've seen out there. Real riders know the difference between luck and awareness, and your experience might help someone else stay upright longer. The same crash, over and over. think back to the crashes you've heard about, or maybe the ones you've seen yourself. A car turns left-right in front of a rider who had the right of way. A bike runs wide in a corner that didn't look that sharp at first. Someone loses control on a road they've ridden 100 times, like it suddenly changed on them. Different riders, different roads, different days, but the story sounds the same every time. Left turn intersections are one of the biggest examples. You're moving straight, everything looks clear, and then a driver cuts across your path like you were never there. It happens so often it's almost expected, yet it still catches riders off guard. Not because it's rare, but because it shows up in a way that feels sudden, even though the setup was there long before the move happened. Corners tighten when entry speed is too high, especially on familiar roads. Riders trust memory, stop reading the road, and miss early signs like changing radius or surface. The line fails, the bike drifts wide, and panic follows. It feels sudden, but the mistake began earlier when attention quietly faded away unnoticed. None of these situations are rare. They repeat constantly, across different places and different riders. Once you start recognizing them, you see how often the same setups appear. The details change, but the structure stays the same. And that's what makes the next realization harder to ignore, especially when it comes to experience. Why experience doesn't guarantee safety. It's easy to assume that time in the saddle automatically makes a rider safer. Years add up, miles stack, and it feels like that alone should build something solid. And in some ways, it does. You get smoother, more comfortable, more connected to the machine. But comfort isn't the same thing as awareness, and that's where the gap starts to show. There are riders with decades behind them who still get caught in the same situations. Not because they don't know how to ride, but because the way they think hasn't kept evolving. Experience without adjustment can turn into routine. And routine has a way of dulling attention. The road starts to feel predictable, and that feeling is exactly what opens the door to mistakes. On the other side, there are riders who use every mile as feedback. They notice what almost went wrong, not just what went right. They adjust small things constantly, refining how they move, how they position, how they read the environment. Over time, that builds something different. Not just experience, but awareness layered on top of it. That's the real divide. It's not about how long someone has been riding. It's about what they've been doing with that time. Some riders collect miles. Others build a system without ever calling it that. And that system, quiet as it is, changes everything about how the road unfolds in front of them. Where the eyes go first. Watch closely, and the difference shows up immediately in where riders are looking. The ones who stay upright aren't staring at the pavement just ahead of the front wheel. Their attention is carried far down the road, picking up movement, shapes, and changes before they get close. It's not exaggerated or obvious, just a steady habit of keeping their focus out in front where the next problem is forming. Meanwhile, plenty of riders stay locked into a narrow view, watching what's right in front of them, reacting to what's already happening instead of what's coming. The road is always giving information early. A car angled slightly at a side street, a shadow across a lane, a change in surface tone before a corner. None of it jumps out if you're not looking for it. Riders who stay crash-free don't need anything dramatic to catch their attention. Small details are enough. They pick them up without forcing it, the same way you'd notice a shift in sound from an engine that doesn't feel right. It's constant, quiet awareness. Most problems don't appear suddenly. They build. A driver edges forward before committing to a turn. A line through a corner tightens before you feel it. Gravel sits where the pavement changes color long before your tires reach it. All of it is there in advance, but only if your eyes are working ahead of you instead of chasing what's already under the bike. A clearer look at the road opens the door to something else that never stops running in the background. The constant mental work. What you see is only part of it. What matters just as much is what your mind is doing with it. Riding isn't passive, even when it feels smooth and controlled. There's a steady process happening all the time, taking in what's around you and turning it into small adjustments that keep everything flowing. It doesn't feel like work when it's done right, but it never switches off. Every movement around you means something. A car drifting slightly within its lane, a driver's head turned away, a gap closing between vehicles. None of it gets ignored. It's all being read, sorted, and given weight. Riders who stay consistent don't wait for a situation to become obvious. They're already working through what those movements could turn into before anything fully develops. Adjustments are subtle. A slight throttle change, a small lane shift, easing off before conditions tighten. There's no drama because decisions happen early, and riding follows smoothly. This focus never switches off, even on easy roads. The moment attention fades, something slips through, because any road can turn dangerous without warning. That difference in how far ahead the mind works becomes the quiet advantage most people never notice. Living further down the road. Some riders are dealing with what's directly in front of them. Others are already working through what's coming further up the road. That difference isn't about speed or confidence. It's about how far ahead the rider is operating in their own head. The ones who stay out of trouble aren't tied to the present moment. They're already thinking through situations they haven't reached yet. Space on the road isn't just distance, it's time. And time gives you options. When you're working further ahead, everything slows down in a way that's hard to explain until you feel it. Movements from other vehicles don't seem sudden. Corners don't tighten unexpectedly. Situations unfold in a way that gives you room to stay in control without forcing anything. Most riders focus on the immediate and obvious, which keeps them occupied but behind the situation. By the time something becomes clear, options are limited and pressure rises. Riders who stay ahead are already reading potential movements and changes, turning what others see as unknowns into manageable situations well before they arrive. Put two riders in the same place at the same time, and the outcome can look completely different without either one realizing why. The same situation, two outcomes. A car waits at an intersection, angled slightly, looking for a gap to turn across the lane. The road is clear, the weather is good, nothing feels urgent. One rider approaches at a steady pace, centered in the lane, holding speed. From their point of view, everything looks normal. The car is just sitting there, and there's no immediate sign that anything will change. Another rider comes through the same stretch. The car is already part of the picture before they get close. The position on the road shifts slightly, opening up more space. Speed eases off just enough to stay in control. Hands adjust without drama, ready if something develops. Nothing sharp, nothing exaggerated, just quiet preparation built into the approach. The driver in the car makes the same decision in both cases. They turn. It's not aggressive, not reckless, just a move made without fully recognizing what's coming toward them. For the first rider, it happens suddenly. There's a quick reaction, a rush of movement, a moment where everything depends on how fast the body responds. Same road, same driver, same decision. The difference shows up in how early each rider was working through the situation. One deals with it as it happens. The other had already made room for it before it began. The confidence trap. It doesn't start with recklessness. It starts with comfort. The same road you've ridden for years, the same turns, the same intersections, the same rhythm you've repeated enough times that it feels automatic. That's where attention begins to slip, not all at once, but gradually. The road feels familiar, so it stops demanding your full focus. You're still riding, still in control, but something underneath that control has softened. Confidence steps in and fills that gap. It tells you that you've handled this stretch 100 times before, that nothing here is new, that you already know how it plays out, and most of the time, that confidence feels justified. The ride goes smoothly, nothing goes wrong, and it reinforces the idea that you're reading everything correctly. But what's really happening is that awareness is being replaced by assumption. When awareness fades, the road shifts from something you read to something you drift through. And subtle cues disappear not because they're invisible, but because you stop searching for them. That's why mistakes appear when nothing feels wrong, as normal conditions mask early warning signs, turning what seems like bad timing into a lapse in attention that began earlier. A different kind of belief starts to take over once attention drops, and it often feels just as convincing. The false sense of protection. Riders pick up certain ideas over time that feel like protection. They get repeated often enough that they start to sound like fact. Things like louder exhausts making you more noticeable, or larger machines somehow giving you an edge on the road. They're easy to believe because they offer a simple answer to a complex problem. Loud pipes are one of the most common examples. The idea is straightforward. If drivers can hear you, they'll know you're there. It sounds reasonable on the surface. But sound doesn't travel the way most people assume. It trails behind, not ahead. And by the time it reaches another driver, you're already past the point where it would matter. The belief feels protective, but it doesn't change how situations develop in front of you. A bigger, heavier bike can feel safer, giving a sense of solidity and control. But weight doesn't slow unfolding danger or create space, and can hinder quick adjustments. These beliefs shift attention from positioning and awareness, replacing skill with false confidence that something external will cover critical gaps when situations tighten. That's where control starts to break down, and the response becomes something entirely different. If you want more straight, no BS breakdowns like this, subscribe and stick around. There's a lot riders aren't being told, and once you start seeing it, you won't ride the same way again. I'll see you in the next one. When panic takes over. When a situation finally crosses the line from manageable to urgent, the body reacts before the mind fully catches up. There's a sudden spike in pressure, a rush to do something, anything, to avoid what's coming. That's where panic lives. It's not a lack of skill, it's a lack of preparation showing itself all at once. Braking is often the first place it shows. Too much input too quickly, a grab instead of a squeeze, weight shifting faster than the tires can handle. What should have been a controlled slowdown turns into instability. The bike reacts, the rider reacts to that reaction, and the situation compounds instead of settling. Corners tighten when entry lines are wrong, forcing abrupt roll-off and mid-turn corrections that destroy balance and erase margin. The idea of laying a bike down isn't a tactic, it's loss of control. Once sliding, there's no steering or braking-only momentum carrying rider, and machine forward into whatever lies ahead. Unavoidable impact. Even when you think you've done everything right to be noticed. There's still a gap that can't be closed from your side alone. The visibility illusion. There's a common belief that if you make yourself visible enough, drivers will recognize you and respond accordingly. Bright gear, positioning, movement, all of it aimed at being seen. And while those things can help, they don't guarantee anything. Seeing something and understanding it are not the same thing. Drivers don't process every object on the road equally. Their attention is filtered, shaped by what they expect to encounter. Larger vehicles, familiar patterns, things that fit into their routine. Motorcycles don't always fall into that pattern, even when they're directly in view. The eyes might register movement, but the brain doesn't always assign meaning to it in time. That's where the gap appears. A rider assumes they've been seen because they're visible. The driver assumes the path is clear because nothing has triggered their attention in the right way. Both are operating on different perceptions of the same moment, and that difference is enough to create a conflict. It's not about blame. It's about understanding how limited human attention can be. Drivers miss things not because they're careless every time, but because their focus is directed elsewhere. A glance in one direction, a distraction inside the vehicle, a moment of assumption instead of confirmation. It doesn't take much. That realization closes the gap between what riders believe keeps them safe and what actually influences the outcome. Once those beliefs fall away, what remains is something much simpler and far more consistent. What gets eliminated early. Before the engine even fires, a lot has already been decided. The riders who stay upright don't leave their condition to chance. No alcohol, no lingering distraction from a rough conversation, no riding while mentally somewhere else. It's not about being strict for the sake of it. It's about knowing that even a small drop in focus carries forward into everything that follows once the wheels start moving. There's also a quiet consistency in how they treat the ride itself. A short trip across town doesn't get less attention than a long run on open highway. Familiar roads don't earn shortcuts in awareness. The same level of focus shows up every time, because the road doesn't care how many times you've seen it before. That repetition builds a habit, and that habit becomes the baseline they ride from. What gets removed here is risk before it ever has a chance to build. There's no waiting to deal with a problem once it appears. The conditions that allow problems to form are stripped away early. Fatigue, distraction, emotional drift, all of it addressed before the first mile. It doesn't feel dramatic, but it changes the entire ride. With the basics locked down before the ride even starts, the next layer shows up in how space is used once the bike is moving. Always leaving space. On the road, space is everything. Not just distance from other vehicles, but how that distance is shaped and maintained. Riders who stay out of trouble are constantly adjusting where they sit within a lane, never fixed in one position for long. A slight shift to the left opens a view past traffic ahead. A move to the right increases separation from a vehicle drifting too close. These changes are small, but they happen continuously. Blind spots are treated like areas to avoid, not places to pass through casually. If another driver can't see clearly, that space doesn't get used unless it's necessary, and even then it's handled quickly. There's no lingering beside another vehicle, no riding in a position where someone else's decision could trap you. Movement keeps that from happening. The same idea carries through when traffic tightens. Getting boxed in between vehicles is something these riders work to avoid early, not something they try to escape at the last second. A slight adjustment in speed, a change in position, and the space opens back up. It's not about reacting to being trapped. It's about never letting that situation fully form. Once space is managed properly, the role of skill begins to shift in a way most riders don't expect. Skill is the backup plan. There's a difference between having strong control and needing to use it suddenly. Braking hard, swerving quickly, holding a tight line under pressure, those are all valuable abilities. They matter, and riders who stay consistent tend to keep those skills sharp. But they don't treat them as the first line of defense. When those skills are needed without warning, it usually means something earlier was missed. A situation developed without being addressed in time, and now the rider is forced to rely on physical ability to recover. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. Either way, it's happening late in the process, when options are already limited. The riders who stay upright see those moments differently. A close call isn't something to celebrate. It's something to look back on. Where did the situation begin? What sign was overlooked? What adjustment could have been made sooner? That kind of reflection turns experience into something useful, instead of something that just gets added to a list of stories. All of it builds toward a difference that isn't obvious at first glance, but becomes clear once everything is put together. The real difference. Step back and look at the whole pattern, and it starts to line up in a way that's hard to ignore. Early awareness, steady discipline, careful use of space, and skill sitting quietly in the background. None of it stands out on its own as something dramatic. But together, it forms a way of riding that changes how situations develop long before they reach a critical point. Problems don't appear suddenly for these riders because they're being worked through early. A car that might turn is already part of the plan before it moves. A corner that might tighten has already shaped the approach. Traffic that could close in has already been managed before it becomes restrictive. It's not about reacting faster, it's about not being surprised in the first place. That's why the ride looks so uneventful. No sudden inputs, no sharp corrections, no moments where everything depends on one quick decision. The bike flows through situations because those situations were handled ahead of time. From the outside, it can seem almost too smooth, like nothing challenging ever happens. In reality, the challenges were dealt with earlier, when they were still easy to manage. The riders who last are not the ones chasing close calls and calling it skill. They are the ones who stay ahead of trouble, leave themselves room, and make the quiet decision before the loud mistake happens. That is what keeps a man riding year after year. If this made you think about your own riding, hit the like button, subscribe for more straight motorcycle talk, and tell me in the comments what habit has saved you the most out on the road. Your story might help another rider stay upright.